having that theatrical ability to put character into movement, that's one. And the other is just pure physicality. You got to be able to go 8 hours. You got to be able to be powerful, because it's this weird merge of like clown and football. Right. But what the thing I always cast for is like versatility and the ability to take direction. That's like, I'm telling everybody this, like, this is the secret. Your skills don't really matter. It's your ability to take direction and modify. We tend not to do much martial arts in mocap. It's like you really only do like 8 moves.
Today I have Eric Jacobus with me. Hi, Eric.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am very stoked, as I said, because, and I go on your website, so that's where we're starting, right? So you say you list yourself as an action designer and a mad scientist. So if you hadn't looked him up before, then you would be like, what would that mean? But your passion for a lot of things around science and movement and all of these things and the history of everything is just, you seem to be going down rabbit holes to explore all of the things that you're curious about. So that totally makes sense. But you are a stuntman, a motion capture performer, and you're the co-owner of Superalloy Interactive, which is a mocap studio based in Las Vegas, and also a host of a podcast that sounds very similar called Action Talks with Eric Jacobus. And you just had a cool guest on yours too. We had Michael J. White as a guest. So once again, welcome.
Thanks for the plug.
Your credits also speak for themselves. Literally anybody that's ever even watched a video game ad, never even played a video game, will recognize any of these titles. So talking about Mortal Kombat, and of course, Call of Duty, and of course, one of the big ones in that sense, also God of War, because how you got into, the movements of Kratos, and then also stunt coordinating Ragnarok. So that will be very interesting to see, because you were on the PlayStation's YouTube site, kind of showing the world who you are and how you created it. And amazing in this world of the internet, how being on YouTube can launch some people's careers.
Yep.
But all of that there, so much information, so much knowledge. We're going to peel it back a little bit. So I want to know your origin story. And from what I found on the trivia, it says, which makes a little sense, that you were originally a math major, but then Jackie Chan happened in your mind, in your brain, triggered something. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a tech nerd growing up, and took all my toys apart whenever I'd get them for Christmas. And I didn't always put them back together again, but I always had that kind of mindset where I just wanted to understand how things worked. And got into computer programming when I was 15, had a job for 4 years at the community college where I lived. My grandma would have to drive me to work. So I couldn't, I was 15 at the time. Yeah, so I was really into math, physics, and wanted to work in a particle accelerator. And there was just something about I always did kind of, I think a lot of people have this kind of similar bug. They watch movies growing up, and they get an idea that, oh, maybe I could do that someday. And I was really into Arnold Schwarzenegger as a kid, and bought his biography from the Scholastic catalog in Catholic school, and read through it, and I was just like, whoa, this guy had no idea he did steroids, of course. That was a little bit disheartening. Uh but I think, like, growing up, the only action movies I knew were these kind of Hollywood big budget films, which I loved, and I love them to this day. But it's kind of like, well, how do you even begin to make a movie like that? So it was never really like a real ambition. But then, like you said, Jackie Chan happened, and it was the Police Story mall fight. I caught that on TV one night, and there was just something about it that, it didn't have that same kind of high concept Arnold Schwarzenegger feel to it. It felt doable. And I was just really into it, and I started watching all of his movies and as many Sammo Hung movies as I could find, and I just kind of kept going down the rabbit hole. And I started a review website in like 1998, I think, and because I knew how to make websites, because I was a programmer and web developer at the college. So I knew how to do that stuff, which is not an easy task in 1998. And so I put together, eventually I wrote like 240 reviews, I think is what I topped out at. And the thing I focused on was just action. I just would kind of obsess over the action. And I wouldn't even review the story half the time. I was just kind of looking at like how the action was composed, how the stunts were done, the way the editing worked, the way the camera worked. And after like 2 years of doing that, it kind of seemed doable at a
So
certain
when you
point.
say doable, you mean in terms of action that's very natural in the sense because how martial arts and how the filming is versus in a lot of these action scenes that have like the visual effects, the other things, the gadgets and stuff, or in which way did it feel that way to
Yeah,
you?
I mean, it felt like you could just make an action movie by getting some guys in front of a camera. Never felt that way with Arnold. It always felt bigger than that. Um,
Which is so
and
crazy with his
yeah,
story. I mean, I loved watching that documentary because he was just this boy from like Austria. Like I can really relate because I'm from Germany. I was born and raised there. And I came to like when you watch these things, you're like, that's like an impossible thing to ever do. And now to be in the United States and be in this industry feels like I must definitely be in a simulation. So technically looking at his story, it's like, wow, so this guy from a village before there was any internet or anything was able to kind of do this. But I know what you mean, speaking of that. But your background in martial arts, I saw online they said there were a bunch of things. I didn't see kung fu specifically on there. Did you do any of and because
no,
I
never
saw a
did any of
video
that.
that you had about the martial arts and the Hong Kong style, and it opened my heart. I had to send my Sifu a message. I do kung fu and I do Mi Sung Lu Han style, which is from back then, from that era, from the Jiwoo Academy that you were covering in one of your videos. So that grandmaster that was there taught Johnny Lee, who then came to America and taught, and he's like it's boom. I was like, whoa, you're like telling the story of my lineage. I was like northern style kung fu in it. And I opened my heart and I had to send my Sifu a message. But I was really curious. So did you look at all of these things and then kind of replicate the moves, or did you get formal training in those arts?
No, when I started making movies, I my martial arts training was pretty limited. I'd done a little bit of Kempo, but my main thing had been done gymnastics, a lot of weightlifting, and high diving. And so I knew how to hit the ground. There was just I was able to fall on concrete. And I didn't have like good looking movements, which kind of was just my style. I surrounded myself early on with people who knew how to move around, and they would look good, and I would be the one that falls down. And I
So
try and
this was because
copy
you were
that.
in California, right? So you had the idea, you knew you wanted to do it, and you started, and then you found like your people.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I met one of the first members of my stunt team at the video store, right? And yeah, and then I met my cameraman, and in college he was my friend, and then you start to kind of build a team like that, and you build this train, and the vision was kind of crazy, right? Like here we are watching Hong Kong movies, and I turned to him at one point. His name is Chelsea. I turned to him. I'm like, what if we did that? We're watching like, what were we watching? I think we actually were kind of fed up with all of the wire fu that was coming out in the late 90s, and we wanted to make non-wire fu action films. I think that was kind of a driving force for us. We really loved the Jackie Chan stuff. And again, I had done all these reviews, and I kind of thought about it in my head, and I was like, I actually know how to do this, I think. It's just editing. It's all it is. Like
Hmm.
you can actually do bad looking moves. They do it all the time. They get non-martial artists, and I'll be fine. I'll kick ass because all I have to do is like if I have a bad kick, well, I just know where to put the camera so that kick looks straight.
That's awesome.
So that's how it started. But then, 2 years in, I really wanted to kind of get some legitimate training in. So I started taking Taekwondo. I moved to San Francisco and just went in the phone book and like found a school. And first school I went to was a Hung Gar school, but it was a little bit culty. So
You do get that, yeah.
yeah, he was like, oh, you can't do any other martial arts while you're here. And I was like, all right, well, forget that. So I went to the next thing was a Taekwondo school. So I started formally training then.
Nice. So did you just overnight? So there was this idea, you done all of these reviews and you fell in love, you knew you wanted to do it, you found crazy people that were like, yeah, of course, let's do it. Did you notice, was it like an immediate shift in your trajectory and change in life? Like, how did it happen? Did you like quit your job and then start getting into it, or
Yeah,
how was that
eventually I
start?
did. I quit my job during the summer. I just so like, oh, I'm gonna go and make action movies. My boss was like, 4 years? You're gonna, what do you want to do? And yeah, I was like, sorry, man, I kind of found my passion. Um, this wasn't it, but we stayed cool.
How did you
It was,
make your
it was
money
great
during
fun.
that beginning time then? So you were trying to make these films, you're getting into action, like,
Yeah, well, I was 18, so at first it was just I was just kind of living off of savings for a little while, um, and then jumped into, went to film school. Um, and I was just kind of living off of tuition at that time. Um, Not much money, you know, but I don't know. It doesn't really matter when you're doing it.
oh
You live
no,
poor,
especially
it's
when you're
okay.
young. That's where I feel like the biggest difference, if somebody's like young and they think they got to hop straight into life and they think, okay, maybe I'll make changes. It's so much easier when you're young to try out things. If it fails, do something else
Yeah.
or find a detour, because you don't have all the big bills yet and a lot of those responsibilities. So definitely there was a time in my early 20s, I did live off of ramens and cereal while I was living in New York. And that was just it. The dollar menu at the Burger King, I would get the like Whopper Junior and some onion rings and ask for the barbecue sauce and make a little rotillo burger.
Yeah. I would go to 99 Ranch Market, which had super cheap produce, and I'd get a ton of tofu, and it was just super cheap living. Like you could not live cheaper. And I'd carry it all home by hand. Yeah, and but like you don't care at that time, it's fine.
Yeah. And then so you got started with that. What was the first big thing where you said you did where you felt like I finally arrived?
Yeah, so during film school, my first break, winter break, I went back to my hometown, which is Redding, California, near Oregon, and had like learned a thing or two about film school, but I got really heated up. First of all, because I hadn't really shot a whole lot while I was away. I had met like one guy who was my Taekwondo teacher, and that was it. That's all I had. And we were shooting stuff in the gym, but that was about it. So I really wanted to go back and make a movie. Plus, I had learned a little bit from cinema. I also learned from cinema school, but I also learned in film school that like nobody was making movies. We hadn't made any movies for film school yet. And I was just like, oh my God, I got to get out of this place so I can make a movie, which is a weird thing to say in film school.
I believe
And
it.
so we shot this like, just this thing called Teamwork 2, this short film, and put it online, and it did really well. And there was a guy who was doing a compilation series called Everyone is Kung Fu Fighting, and he found us and he said, "Can I put your short on Everyone is Kung Fu Fighting?" I was like, "Yeah, cool." And then everybody saw it. It was crazy because this is like '03 when that
I was just
and it
thinking
came
the
out quick.
beginning age of YouTube. So when everybody started, well, like with TikTok that time in 2020, when everybody went to TikTok and whoever was on it grew. So that was you probably. You put
Well,
something out,
this was
right?
before YouTube though. This is '03. YouTube was like '05.
Oh
So
God.
'03 is no YouTube. It was like My 5 Minutes and Meta Cafe. Right? That was the stuff. That was the junk we had. And so you couldn't put a video online really unless you just had a bunch of web space. And so that went on a DVD and that went to every store. Like that year it was out right away. And then I started getting calls from people going like, "Hey, I don't even know how they got my number, but they'd call me up or they'd email me and they say, 'Hey, I love your movie.'" And it was like the lowest budget thing on the DVD, but it had like really kind of high octane action that, we really kind of sweated over. And from there, it was like I started getting a couple jobs. I got my first feature gig. I starred in a feature film. It'll never come out because the director lost everything. It's a
Oh.
horror film. It's okay, not a big loss. I got paid $200, and that was a huge break for me.
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, it was awesome. Free trip and $200.
And I mean, like I said, the God of War thing that happened. So that was on the internet. So between then and Kratos, if you had to summarize, how did you get to that? What were you thinking when you put all that content out, all the moves, the things you were specializing about, that then was found to do that? Was it intentional, or was it really just the passion of the movements and you were putting it out and somebody appreciated your passion?
I think I went through three stages in my career between that DVD and Kratos. So the first stage was like 10 years of just trying to do indie action films. And I was really stubborn. I would get a gig every now and then in LA, but I never really it never really landed fully. And I think it was a kind of an unwillingness on my part to commit because I kind of knew that I would have to do their style at whatever place. I'm not talking about any particular group or anything. Some of these groups are really good, but I just, I was cultivating my style and I just wanted to do it. And I had a day job, and it was not movie related. Like I was a forklifter. I made science projects for kids. I was editing wedding videos. Um, and then I was an admin at a nonprofit for like 5 years. And I was just kind of doing day job stuff so that I could fuel this passion on the side. So I was just a stubborn artist. And then
Reminds me of the Anaconda movie. Did you see the new one where the guy's working as the editor of Jack Black's like an editor at a wedding video like company and reminds me.
sounds like a true
You should, if
story.
you haven't seen that, I really love what Anaconda was very funny, the new one. It reminds me.
Yeah. So things started picking up enough, especially after doing rope-a-dope. Put out that short on YouTube, and that did really well. Went, semi-viral, and we went to festivals and stuff. And then that's why I decided in 2013 to just go full-time stunts. And first year I made 5 grand total. It's not easy, but it was just like an acting thing here, a stunt job there, living off savings in the meantime and trying to do like editing stuff on the side to just bring extra income, right?
Was this in Los Angeles then, or were you at a
No,
different
I
market?
was living in the Bay Area at the time, but most of my jobs would be in LA. So I'd go down there a lot. Um, and a lot of the jobs are paying like again, I'd get like $200 a day for some of these jobs, and that's a lot of that was just spent on gas.
Yeah.
So that's just, I was just trying to kind of make it. But then eventually I started getting more into the stunt side, got more into the previs side, started doing a lot more stunt viz, and I went to China and I went to, what else did I do? Did a few things like that. Worked on Altered Carbon, Black Panther, worked on a whole bunch of these things, and after going to China, so this is like stage two, right? This is like where I've made it, and I'll be honest, I just didn't like it.
Which part?
I didn't like traveling.
I
I had
see.
a kid at the time, had my first kid. Um, I'm a family guy and I don't like being away. That was really hard. And the I couldn't really apply what I wanted to apply. There were some things that was really useful as a previs shooter because when you get pulled into when you get roped into do stunt viz, like you really are pulling two shifts, right? Now all day you're shooting, which is kind of like ergonomically brutal, and then at night you're editing all night, and so you do two shifts, and doing that for 3 months in Beijing just really it just burned me out.
Oh,
I
that
just
does sound like, yeah, that's a really
yeah
long time. Every time I'm always like, oh, it's not so bad editing. Then I get to it, and sometimes it's like seconds by seconds. You got to do something, find the right
yeah
thing, and it takes so long. And if I had to do that like every day for like,
yeah
no, I
yeah.
totally get that.
So I just wanted to move after that because I'm not in the movie. I have a cameo in it. It's called The Heart. Great movie, and it was a great job, and I loved the team I worked with. But just in that role, and I found myself falling into that capacity, and I was just like, I gotta just like take a few months off and just move around. And so I had done this video on the side called the Kictionary, where I just do 200 different kicks, and I just name them each one, and I put it to music, so it's kind of catchy. And and then I was trying to come up with a Kictionary part two while I was in Beijing, and I would just set up a camera on my free time, and I'd try and like try out new kicks and all that. And I was like, where do I find new kicks from? I've done 200, kind of did them all. There must be more. So I looked up Tekken move lists to try and get inspiration from Tekken. And I found a few, and eventually I was just like, why don't I just do the entire move list from the character? So when I went home, I started just doing that, just to move and like get my performance back, just as a challenge. and the Tekken, which was Tekken in real life. And so I just copy the entire move list from Tekken of any character, right? Starting with Hwarong, which is the Taekwondo guy that made the most sense. But then I did Lei Oolong just for fun. And these are hard because like they for me it was hard because every character in Tekken stands orthodox and I stand southpaw and I spin left, but every Tekken character spins right. And I could have mirrored it, but I decided, you know what? I'm gonna like test myself and see if I can just do everything orthodox. So I did 30 characters. Um, kind of became viral for a minute.
And if you
Uh,
do this many, that much, and there's something that's so known, because even now I love watching when people are like, I do this character, and then they like flip and do the kicks and
yeah.
the unnatural movements, and it looks very cool.
Yeah, yeah. And they took a ton of time. Like every one of them took a full week to shoot and edit. There were some characters where I swear I was spending the entire day on like two moves.
But such a commitment. What was the driving force? Are you one of these people you're like, I really want to do this, and then you start, and then you just like finish the thing that you do? You're like, I want to do these movements. Okay, there's a shit ton more. This takes a hell of a long time to do, but I started. I'm gonna finish it.
Yeah, I was kind of going with that completionist mindset for a while. And then some of the videos started going viral. They get like a million views. I trended on Facebook. I took a photo. I it blew my mind, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like and so then it was like, okay, I gotta like feed the beast. So I gotta keep
Mm,
doing these things, right? And
yeah.
people were asking for, I would ask like, what character do you want? Oh, do whatever night, martial law. So I do martial law. Okay, which one next? And it was really engaging with the community, and which is cool. Um, my subscriber count went from like 20,000 to 180,000, like very quickly. But then with that, which means that 160,000 of my subscribers just came for Tekken in real life. That's all they wanted.
Mm.
And any deviation from that, they're like, "Where's my Tekken?"
Oh my God. I can, yeah, the internet's very demanding, so I can totally see
Right?
that.
Well, like think about like you're just a consumer and you go to this guy, oh, he's the Tekken guy. Okay, cool. I'm watching the Tekken stuff and he releases a short film. And you're like, I don't care about that.
Oh
Why would I watch
yeah.
that? I'm here for Tekken. So they'd get ornery and but even like if they don't do anything, like, YouTube just wouldn't show them the video, right? So anything that and eventually I gotta admit I got burned out again on feeding the beast because if you are aiming for YouTube virality, it's way too difficult, I think, for the average person to maintain. You need a company. You need a
Yeah,
company to
that's
do
what
that.
you see a lot. That's why it was so much easier at the beginning on TikTok. I remember when that came out, they started doing some stuff, and then all of a sudden everything closed down. So there were only a few creators, and then my follower account, like, and then I was like a month, and I had 10,000 followers. So I'm just making stupid videos. And then like now it stalled like even a couple months later, and because then the YouTubers came that had all these companies and had all the big stuff, so then more of the content came on, and then also the algorithms changed, and then eventually, but I do remember when it's like, oh man, all these people like want to see these like comedy bit thingies, and having to come up with something new, like I'm at work and then I have an idea, got to go and break to film it real quick, and then I remember that was really stressful. And then
It's
you
super
also get very
stressful. Yeah.
down when
Yeah.
something doesn't perform as good as the
Yeah.
last one. And it's so dumb. You know it's not important, but like the likes aren't coming in like that way, and it makes you feel like you're just whoa, bombing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a horrible feeling and I don't think it's normal.
No, it's
And I
not normal.
don't
I don't really want to have that again. I didn't enjoy that. I don't want to be viral for anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I kind of adopted the mindset later on, which is one pair of eyes is all you need. The idea is that what you want to do is you want to use it as a platform to send out things to people who can give you a contract. That's what you want. You want a contract, right? Or a job or a gig, whatever it is, right? That's what you want, right? So
Yeah.
then a video with 500 views will it'll get you a job, right? Whereas if you're putting out a video every day or every week that has a million views, you might make the same amount of money as that job, maybe, but you're going to be slaving at that thing. So anyway,
Work
after
smarter,
doing,
not harder.
yeah, I think so. And also just work, do the stuff that you like.
Yeah.
It'll show. When you fall into that rut of feeding the beast and just trying to make viral content, nobody hires you for that.
Yeah.
Like you won't get far with that. You always have to have something else going on. Um, and if you're an artist, I'm not talking about like Mr. Beast, who's just like a producer. He's a producer who's a personality. But I think most of us are not producers. Most of us are just creators. And so we have an art form that we want to, get out there and test, and we want to prove ourselves. And you should just do that. And
Oh, totally.
if you find that the algorithm is telling you like, no, 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 you should whatever, you should stop being funny. Comedy's not doing well this week. You shouldn't be funny, right? Like they'll say crap like that, which by the way is kind of the same thing they say at AFM. This is nothing new. Like advertising has always been like this. There's always these metrics. There's always somebody saying comedy's not doing well right now, right? There's always some
As
idiot
always,
saying that.
everything. There's always a fear of something new. It was interesting
Yeah.
because I had Frank Alfano from New York, and we were talking about like AI, and it was so funny because he was telling me when he started 20 years ago, CGI was like the thing. Oh my God, it's going to take everyone's work, and it's like with everything all the time. The electricity, the internet, like everything that comes takes your job. We're always like our human mind
Right.
is just so
Yeah.
but I agree. I don't put out anything just to put out anything. Like even this podcast, like I do this because I am such a curious person. Like I have a
Yeah.
master's in psychology because I just love the mind. Like I got my degree knowing I wasn't gonna probably get a great paying job because I wanted to know more. And just reading
Yeah.
the books for me wasn't like good enough. I was like, I want to prove to myself I can get this degree. So I like went to school. But with the podcast, just like oh man, I want to like know so much more and I want to be able to share it. And it started with some of the people I personally knew. I was like, oh, all this stuff, nobody knows you do this. Let's talk about it and share it.
Yeah.
And so what I share, if it's just only ever the people that know me that enjoy watching the journey, like hearing all this stuff, totally fine. But like you said, also I don't want to put out anything that would hurt getting work or anything. Would be nice if what I put out is helpful in getting work because that's like the curated sense of what social media for us
Hmm.
artists in that sense is. But this is
Hmm.
within the field, so it's I just love doing this. Speaking of which, though, how did your podcast start? Like, how did you start action talks? Like, what was did it also just start by you're talking to someone, you're like, oh man, I should make this a thing?
I didn't even start it as a podcast. I started it as a research project because I was working on writing my first book, which is called If These Fists Could Talk. It's on Amazon. Let's see if you can see it. You, Zoom's
Yeah.
trying to censor me. Yeah, if these fists could talk, a stuntman's unflinching take on violence. You can get it on Amazon in paperback or Kindle format. And the thing I was studying was how whether or not there was a relationship between a language and the way a specific movement style worked in a country. So, for example, is the Japanese language related somehow to the very specific brand of like samurai action? So Chinese language related somehow to like Hong Kong action. And the so that just kind of took me into these interesting interviews. And one of the first guys I talked to was Kenji Tanigaki. And I started talking and we talked for like 3 hours. And I started
So
talking to
easy when you're passionate.
yeah, I mean, we were just nerding out, and at that time, I was really kind of like pushing for like my theory, and I was trying to get stuff out of him. So I feel bad because he's the first guy I interviewed, and I was just like telling him like, no, I want to talk about this right now. It has to be, and I was a terrible interviewer because it wasn't a podcast. But
Yeah.
I had a coworker at the time. He was like, why don't you just edit that into a podcast and start doing these? And so that's how it started, and then it just became like it really kind of like what you're talking about a research project. Still, I mean, it was originally was that, but it's like, well, now I want to share the research with people. And, to me, it's like a film school of all your favorite,
and it
action
is
stars and
like that's like I
stunt
said, it was
performers.
part of my regular podcast, which is just my journey as a general. I was this little girl in Germany, grew up, then eventually I came here and all the things and blah 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 blah, the millions of thousands of things I've done so far. And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna put that on there. And I was like, oh, people are like, oh man, I really love this. We don't hear enough of that of people in our community and of other stunt people and other areas and of these niches. And I was like, oh my God, people are actually reacting to this. And it's like, I'll put a few more. And I was like, all right, I can't have this just on there. Cause like what you were saying earlier, people come here for Tekken on the
Yeah.
one thing and you're putting out something else. So it's like, all right, people really also enjoy this. I guess we're going to do this.
That's
And
great.
then
Yeah.
like your name fell too, and I was like, how excited people were. They were like, "Where can I watch this when it comes out?" I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy that everyone's just as excited as I am because I just want to know all the things and I want to connect with people." And I live in Florida. Like I everywhere I want to meet and network people, I have to fly, and it's very expensive. And this is just so cool to be like, "Can you hop on the Zoom?
Yeah.
Let's talk about all this stuff," and then you can share it and whoever is interested can watch it
Yeah.
and whoever not can just scroll past
Yep. Agreed.
it. So from that though, how does one, just twofold question, open up a mocap studio, and what made you choose Las Vegas?
Well, okay, going back to how I even got to Kratos, which was like never really my goal. Mocap, I was doing mocap back in 2014, 2015, just like on the side while I was trying to do, legitimate stunts. And
It's so
and
funny because
I
I started since because I want to do video games.
right. Yeah, so my first big game doing mocap was actually Mafia 3, which was in the Bay Area. It made sense. They were just trying to hire local stunt performers. I did that for a long time, and I realized like, man, this is way more stunts than I ever do in movies. Way more. Like if you're the victim in the mocap, right? Like for Mafia 3, it's always about the protagonist. He's just going and like he's grabbing people and throwing them on the ground, grabs
Yep.
this guy, chokes him out, and throws him. He grabs this guy around the corner, so that's me, that's Dennis, and a few of us. We're just getting thrown around and ragdolled all day, which is I mean, like for 8 hours, right? And that's actually a lot more than you typically do on a stunt shoot. And so I think I was kind of being primed for big time in a sense. But I didn't intend to do mocap. And then but the team that does God of War, Sony Santa Monica, they saw the Tekken in real life videos, and they called me up and they said, "You know how to move like a video game character." I didn't even know what that meant, and they said, "Well, don't worry, you'll figure it out. Can you come and audition for, this new game we're doing, which is God of War 2018. So this is back in 2015, I think, 2016.
Yeah, it always takes
Now,
quite a while. Yeah.
yeah, and I went in because I had kind of like, I don't know, also the, the thing about mocap shoots and the audition was like this too. It was an 8 hour audition. It was like nonstop movement.
Wow.
But like, we had done indie shoots that were like that. And when I say stunts are usually pretty laid back by comparison, I mean mainstream movie stunts. Like
Yeah.
you're not really moving for 8 hours on a movie. But when we're doing these indie action movies, we kind of are, right? Like when we did, I remember like the end of Rope-a-Dope 2 was a crazy, just 12-hour nonstop. It was nonstop for 12 hours at the end of Rope-a-Dope 2 for that fight.
Well, I
And
hear of that a lot. People have been fighting for the union to fight for that, the safety on those sets, the conditions, and I know a lot of times the pay wasn't like the same either, and not super glamorous, which is why a lot of people didn't want to do stunts for video games.
well, I'm a sucker for it in a weird way. There's something about me that likes, I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm like really maybe my spirit animal is a mule. No, a workhorse, not a mule. I'd be the opposite. I like being pushed, and I like it when somebody is like trying to shape me into what they need. And so when I went to do God of War, I realized like day one they were trying to shape me into this movement style that I was not used to because I was very very used to this Hong Kong movie style, which is very snappy and punchy. I'd done that for 15 years. I knew it. And that's like kind of how I moved all the time. But that wasn't going to work for Kratos. That is
Yeah.
not the way he moves. He's much bigger. He's much more American in an interesting way. You can even say he's Disney. He's much more Disney.
Yeah, and on your like the website, you can see all of the movements and how you really started and incorporated them. Yeah, it's very theatrical in the
Yes.
sense too.
Yeah, so it's very theatrical, but it has to have like a lot of power at the same time. And so I managed to do that at the audition. So that's when I was in, got God of War, did that for 2 years. And then once my name started going around in the circles, people kind of were like, "Oh, okay, well let's hire him to do our game." And so I ended up going around to quite a few games at that time. But the thing is, doing freelance mocap is super hard in terms of networking. Like, where do you even network
Mm-hmm.
for mocap? I still don't know. I know there are people who claim to be able to like get you a job. I've never seen that work. I swear, like
Yeah, it seems
lots
so
of people
different
who
from what
claim
I
to be,
see. You have some
yeah,
of the casting directors that do like casting for the video games, like Julia Bianco Scheffling, who does a lot of big video games. Sometimes, like Mocap PCAP comes in with some of the people she works with. But then you also hear stunt coordinators get called for certain things. And then you have the Mocap studios have people on their roster. That's how yours, I think, a lot of it probably is from what it looked like on the website. But
yeah.
so that's why I was wondering when you're in there, is everybody like pitching in that sense to get a job? Because like it sounds now way different from what you were saying. You're like, I still don't really know. So it's
Well,
really
but
curious.
you can't go in there. You
Mm-hmm.
can't go in anywhere. What are you gonna do? They're like video game companies are not, they don't operate like movie studios. They're castles.
Oh yeah, Treyarch just had one of those things. So I'm in the Veterans in Media and Entertainment um, member with them, and they have every year that you can apply to be one of like a few people that can go into Treyarch Studio. You like look, I leave your phone, all your stuff, sign an NDA, and like really go through all the
Yeah.
jobs and talk to all the people and see it and make those connections. So I had told one of my friends who's in there, and he ended up getting on there. I was like, next year I'm going to be in LA because I was in LA the week before, so I couldn't apply for it. Now that was not an investment I was able to make to fly to LA twice a week for a chance to go into the studio,
Yeah.
not knowing what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
But there's like when I saw that, like how tricky it is because the little tiniest leak of like anything is
Oh, you're
like,
done. Your career's over.
yeah.
Your career's over. Um, so it's really hard. And so
So you're saying it
kind of,
still is, but so now having a studio, did that open some of the doors that people are like, oh, they do that, so now you get a chance because you're coordinating some of it and being an owner, or is it still
yeah,
really
I mean
tough?
the reality is that, the big game studios, like for example, if you wanted to contact Amazon to get into their games, who do you talk to?
Yeah,
Right? And
correct.
so like if you have a company, they're much more willing to talk to you. That's
What
just the
about the people
reality of
you
it.
worked with? So if you've worked with somebody who had hired you, there next time they're not like a good source of knowing who does the next one, or
So you mean like, okay, so the way that I have pretty much gotten brought on to most of my jobs is because the animators and directors I work with, they move around to different companies and they recommend me, and it's the middle up approach, right? Where, usually at a game company, you'll have producers. I don't know how often this would be, but I do find it common that producers at game companies, if they need to do some motion capture, they sort of go to casting. They'll go to these sort of like this top layer of the organization to figure out who to cast. So, for example, Kratos is 6'6", I think. So it made sense at the beginning, they thought, for casting to bring on a 6'6" stuntman, six
mm-hmm.
foot three. And so they brought on Shad Gaspard, and he passed years ago. But like when an animator takes someone who's that big and they try and make like snappy gameplay mechanics, it's really hard. You have big movement, yes, but that's not going to give you snappy game mechanics. And so they
Yeah.
brought me in, and I'm 5'6". But if I'm an actor, but if you're hiring me as an actor, I'm 5'9", but I'm 5'6"
I was
in
like, I
mocap.
thought it said 5'9". You just
Yeah,
flipped
as an
it.
actor, I'm 5'9". In mocap, I'm 5'6". And like my ratio fit, and I could hit it, I could do it like snappy. And sometimes casting doesn't always think like that. A lot of the time, casting
Hmm.
thinks of like, what are their credentials? Obviously, that's important. What is their training? What is their celebrity? They do think like that sometimes. So not all game companies are like this, but a lot are. And so what the thing then that animators and crew try to do is push our name up to
Mm.
producers. That's a lot of the time how we get recommended, where the animators go, I don't want to work on bad data. I want to work on good data.
That makes sense.
I don't
Yeah.
want to have to mess with this because I hate crunch. This is the thing, right? Like who gets really killed during crunch? Programmers, animators,
Hmm.
systems people. They should get killed during crunch. And if they're trying to, if they're taking a guy who's standing like this and they're trying to make him stand like this and it's taking him hours, they fucking hate that guy. That guy is blacklisted to them now. And at some point, somebody's going to say, why do we always have to work with this guy's feet? He's got the wrong footwork. Why couldn't he just put his left foot forward? It's wasting hours of my time. Eric always has his left foot forward. Why can't we just go with Eric? And at some point, someone's going to listen so that that guy doesn't set the building on fire like Milton.
It's so funny
So,
that you say that how they work with that because so my entry was into voice acting and that's when I knew, oh, okay, there are so many voice actors that want to do video games. I was like, I got to stand out. I start do martial arts, get into stunts, and that's like how I'm getting into all of this. But it's the same one. The first time I did a character that was used for a VR game, and I got to see it, I was like, I could tell like how my attitude shaped like the eyebrow going up of this character. And that's like the first time when you actually realize what they mean. Like you can't just like say something to say it. Like your attitude that you bring to it, your body movement in that sense,
yeah,
everything you do shapes that the animator doesn't have to imagine as much or work extra hard
right.
because it goes with it. So I can see that even though, yeah, like trying to fix the foot. Like we were talking about editing, just simple editing. I mean, any regular editing, or if you ever worked in an Excel sheet, everything always takes forever. I worked for a tech company before too, and I was like, should be easy. And then you fix this one bug, and then it's like 10,000 other bugs with working on usability testing. And you think everything's fine. You have all your team tested, and then you put it out to the people, and then they're like, alert, alert. And it's like, oh,
Right. So that gives you insight then. For example, if you were to go into a data providing company of some kind, you would kind of know how to provide data for Excel sheets,
yeah,
right? So that you're kind of imagining, you know, you 10 years ago, like, oh, why do I have to deal with this stupid data? They never put commas in, they always use semicolons,
yeah.
right? The stuff like that, right? So you can start thinking like them. And so once you get to know, and I've never been an animator, but I have programmed and I know tech and I know that bad data sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And the best thing you can do is give an animator good data. And they love it when you just add, you give everything. And the Kratos movement that they taught me was kind of this kind of attempt to give the animators way more movement than they would ever need so that you can kind of like squash the curves if you need to, because it's way harder to bring the curves up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're asked to throw a punch and you just do this, and it's like how do they add character to that? It's like,
Yeah.
why are you, as an animator, you should not have to add character.
And that's exactly that point. So it's interesting that you say that. I would have not thought with physicality, if you go extra, extra, that that's easy because you would think you still have so much to adjust. But you're right. Again, we're in the sense like, who is this character? If you're just kind of wimping all of that, like who brings the energy and the power to all of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. And I guess you could just kind of tone tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, so the way that I learned how to move is uh we would do all these little things to sell the character like head rage. So when we would throw the attack, we would throw the head too. I came up with all kinds of other little like tricks to kind of add character to movement that is just kind of hard to add for the animator. But like makes sense physically
Yeah.
makes sense in the body, so it doesn't look like out there. And so the ability to kind of like tell a story in every little one of those movements, I call it 2 second storytelling. And so it's the ability to really tell the audience an entire story with that move, which they're going to see thousands of times in the game.
So is that also how it's broken down? So you go in and there are all these different things. You have full on scenes where the scenes are there. You have all the things you're walking on, working, all the stuff, and then actual fight scenes that choreograph. And then you have the things that are individual movements that you're doing. So how does that usually work? Does it break down? You start kind of with the movements and then you go into sections, or is it a little like with film, whatever is the cheapest to start with right now? How does that usually work?
Well, usually, uh, like for the big game companies, the cinematics team and the gameplay team are different. They'll have different directors.
Okay.
So like the cinematics team has like their own camera team, they have their own crew. So when you go and do cines, that's going to be its own day. You're going to have a different director. Um, and then when you go to do gameplay, you're going to have the director of that character sometimes,
Hmm.
um, or you'll just have the gameplay director. And the requirements are vastly different. Cines, our company, I don't know, maybe like 15 to 20% of what we shoot is cinematics. The rest is gameplay. It's all these individual movements. And when I say gameplay, I also mean
It's like the
these,
walking on the lines and the walking to your spots and doing all the movements that you need, all the stuff, those
yeah,
things.
you're building the combat engine like a quilt. There are pieces missing from the quilt, and you got to put these pieces in. We need an attack. We need the right overhand attack. We need the left push kick through a door. We need pulling a lever. We need dying, right? So there are those individual movements, but then there are also, and I couch this under gameplay. There are those moments like boss battles where it's the final hit on the boss and it kind of engages a cinematic sequence that tends to fall into gameplay and not cinematics. So we do that a lot too.
So is it
So
then that your movements, you do all of those and somebody else does the villain and then the animators put them together? Or do you have a lot of scenes that are actually fight scenes where you work out specific ways that they would fight? Or does it all have to be individual because the gamer is going to play however they play?
yeah, I mean during gameplay itself, if the protagonist and the NPC are actually engaged physically in something, then we do those together,
Okay.
right? Because you need to have those that synced up. So finishers, throws, fatalities, um, things where you have a definite connection between two characters. We got to do those with two people. But gameplay otherwise is totally separated, and I will do the hero and the NPC. I'll do the hero and villain same day sometimes.
I actually
So
love that because so much of me thinking, oh man, like how many days a week can I go and train somewhere with somebody to get all the fights? Like I of course go train martial arts, but then they're like, well, that's not the same as in stunts necessarily doing martial arts. But if you think about gameplay, like just looking at some of those individual videos from your Kickology, or I think that's what you call it, right?
Dictionary.
Yeah, and you see all the individual movements. You can practice that in the mirror. You can practice that on camera, and it seems like that is the majority of things. So if you're now as an owner are need a specific character now, height you say might not play a big of a role if you can't find that, and I'm sure skin color all that neither because it's all kind of mocap. So you're really looking for a specific skill that someone has and then transforming that into that motion capture.
Yeah, we'll get clients who want to cast specific I mean gender is usually it's usually a gendered role, right? Like if it's a female character, they usually want a female performer because fe women move
That makes
differently.
sense, yeah.
Um and then but then I've been on shoots before where like they have like a super powerful female and I we have a female and she's doing great, and then I'll demo it and I'll do it my way, and they'll pull me aside and they'll be like, "Can we capture your movement too, just in case?"
Oh
So,
my.
so that stuff
I guess
doesn't
it's
make it
like,
to the,
but it's like supernatural in the sense a lot of times too. So yeah,
that's
if you
kind of the
want this
thing.
woman to do something that she can't do in real life, you
Yeah, I mean, it's just what do you want, right? Like which one do you want? So, um, you know, anyway, that's a different topic, I guess. But in general, no, height doesn't matter. All for me when I'm casting, the only time height matters is if, for example, let's say you have a protagonist who's 5'9" in the game, and you have an enemy that's 7 feet tall, right? So you have to cast somebody who's at least relatively taller than your
Mhm.
protagonist,
Yeah.
right? And because otherwise, it's like this is not. They have to like scale that to this. It's going to be a nightmare for them. So, and
Yeah,
we
the
make
odds
those
between the
calls,
eye lines
we'll
and
help out.
reaching. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And like if you're like if you want to jump up onto the guy and pull him down, it's just it's a nightmare if they're not the right ratio. But otherwise, height doesn't matter. The thing that we cast for at our company, whenever because we do get asked to cast a lot. But what the thing I always cast for is like versatility and the ability to take direction. That's like I'm telling everybody this. Like this is the secret. Your skills don't really matter. It's your ability to take direction and modify. That's
How do you
it.
test that usually? So there's somebody new, and you're like, however this person came to you, I guess that would be another question, how this person would even be able to get to you to do that. But then do you test that how you were basically tested out? You had an 8 hour day to do an audition, or how do you
No
get to
need.
know this new performer?
No need. So over the course of doing God of War and doing God of War Ragnarok, I came up with just a really simple system. It's called the 5 stages of movement. And what I do is I just teach people to break the movement down into 5 pieces. In point anticipation, hitbox recovery, out point. That is every movement. You can think of opening a door or falling on the ground, dying or turning on a light, whatever. All of those you can go through the 5 stages of movement. And what that allows you to do is kind of pick apart your movement to like give variety when the client sometimes is kind of like, I don't know, I don't really like it. I think it's not powerful enough. I wish there was a bigger buildup. You can kind of interpret that stuff, right? Now, we don't, what we typically do is I will be a translator usually at our stage between the director and the talent, especially for new directors who are not sometimes animators don't, they don't know how to talk to stunt people, and stunt people don't know how to listen to animators. It's like different languages, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Right. So it's like an animator will say, I just want something acrobatic here. And a stunt performer goes like, geez, what does he want? A backflip? Does he want a cork? It's like, no, he actually just wants a 360. That's what he means. Right. That's all it is. And so it's like little translation terms like that. So what I test then when I audition people is whether or not they like I kind of like to see what their movement vocabulary looks like. So sometimes people get really into martial arts, and God bless martial arts. I'm a big martial arts fan, but sometimes people get so into it, and I don't know if there's abuse going on or what, but for whatever reason, they do not know how to throw a move any differently than they learned. It's like
Because it's
locked
so
in,
drilled.
it's drilled
Yeah.
in, and sometimes they're afraid to do the wrong move.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not going to work. I'm sorry. Bye
I
bye.
can see that a little bit if you like only learned one style and that's like the style and it was drilled, or it's the same how I feel about a lot of tactical things. So I'm prior service military, and then I'm like, all right, but then I go, train with people from different areas to keep everything fresh and learn it for film and TV. And everybody has like their own style. So
Right,
then I go somewhere and then I'm like fearful of doing a move the way I would do it because I'm like,
right.
that's not right. And I'm like, so
Yeah,
it's like finding the fine line between being confident that the way you deliver it at least is authentic to
yeah,
you, or doing it the
yeah,
way you hope they want it to be.
yeah. I mean, I always say without joking that, I will make you a worse martial artist.
Well, that's what makes so
In
much
turn,
more sense because it's
meaning
what
this.
they
So
say.
let me clarify that. I will make you a worse fighter. I will make you a worse fighter because if you do this and you really want to get into it, you'll start to have new ideas of how to throw punches that don't really have anything to do with knocking the guy out in one go. They have more to do with how do you sell this? What if you're 250 pounds? What if you're an astronaut? What if you're a gargoyle? How would you punch as a gargoyle? Nobody thinks like that in martial arts. Why would you? It kind of puts you in danger, right? And so I tell people, like, this is not martial arts class. This is theater.
I
You
was
have
just
to
about
be
to say that
theatrical.
this comes up all the time that people are
Yeah.
like, well, they rather like performers. They love dancers and, of course, like gymnastics
Yes.
because they understand
Yep.
movement
Yep.
and the way the direction is taken. I
Yes.
do feel like learning the martial arts is like before starting just to get into it. I always felt like I wasn't like the most coordinative. And like sometimes like auditory direction would seem like, okay, left, right, left, right. And going into it really helped because you understand basic movements of things. Okay, okay, a jab. Okay, that's my front leg is up front. I should know that helps you less explaining, for example, reverse punch, round kick. At least you know all those things. And then I took fighting for film, and then they started incorporating a bunch of jujitsu. And then I'm like, none of this makes any sense. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go learn some jujitsu to understand the basics of that. So to go into the different moves. And for me, I was talking to Anthony Kornpanum, who's the stunt performer in LA, and he was also saying you don't have to be an expert in anything, but knowing a little bit of everything is super helpful. And that's literally the story of my life. I'm like the generalist. I'm curious. I want to learn and know everything. And I'm not an expert in any of the things I do, but like I want to know.
Yeah, I'm not an expert either. I take a white belt on every new game I take. I do. I take it with pride because every game is going to be a new martial arts school. But it's much more, it's much less martial arts and much more like clowning and theater. Because you're trying to convey a story with your attack, even if you're trying to kill somebody, it's not really about efficiency. Even in a game where the stated goal is for it to look realistic, well, it still has to look dynamic. It has to be playable. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that's like not the same thing as realistic or tactical. You
So
have
as
to
you
kind
get
of
people
blur
in
those
though,
lines.
then so you audition, you say you have these specific moves. So with these, you can tell, let's say you do one of them, and to see if they can take direction well, you take one that's you just to kind of try to modify it. What would be like an example of what you would look for in somebody when they
Yeah.
come in?
Yeah. So for example, what we'll do is I'll add some dice. I have 3 dice, and the dice have random, it's like one of them's for anticipation, one's for hitbox, and one is for recovery. So I'll roll these dice. All right, so this is going to be a double step into a hook punch with a sloppy recovery, right? So do that, right? And like if you want, like come up with a character while you're at it. But Bum is going to throw a punch like that, right? It's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna just re-roll the middle dice. Okay, now it's a headbutt, right?
It
Can you
is
do a
very
head,
theater, very
right?
improv.
All right, okay, now I'm gonna roll the anticipation dice. Oh, now it's a double antic. So now you have to double antic the headbutt, right? Like one and then two. So can you do that? And are you maybe the recovery is like plant on your left foot, plant on your right foot. When you attack, are you going to attack on your left foot? Are you going to attack on your right foot? That stuff really matters. And a lot of people don't really think about what foot they're on. I
Yeah.
obsess over it now, but animators,
Because you have to hit the mark, especially too in certain lengths. Like I know I took
yeah,
a technical class that for somebody who did video games, and he's like, okay, you got to make sure you land at this line, but you
yeah,
also can't look down. So we're
right,
like walking, and I have to make it to this line in certain
yeah,
strides, and you
yeah,
just got to know exactly how
yep,
your stride is.
yep, yep. So are you able to do that for 8 hours?
That's what he said too. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what's going to determine. So, Um, I've seen great stunt performers who are amazing actors too, who they don't know how to do a dance card. Right? A dance card is where you do all of the directional turns for a navigation system in one go. Uh, for example, if you need to do all the 90-degree strafe transitions, like all 8 of them, can you do them all on your right foot first? Okay, then can you do them all on your left foot? A lot of people can't because they're kind of like they're into the character, they're into the moment, and like how do you have to merge this like extremely technical thing that the programmers need you to turn on every time on your left foot or on your right foot, whichever, but you
Mm-hmm.
got to do it. And if I say like go back and do the left turn 90 on your left foot and you go like I did it on my left foot, it's like uh-oh, now we got to, so like you got to have
And that's
the
so funny
ability to
that you
stick with
say
it.
that because like some people don't know. For example, a
Yeah,
lot of times I'm like, oh, I thought I did that, and then I'm like, and sometimes you don't get the feedback to know, oh no, you actually had the right foot. And I'm like, so which part did I not do? So it's also like how somebody sometimes direct, like, oh, that wasn't the right thing. Which part wasn't right? Because it felt right when I
Yeah,
did it. So
yeah,
I can
yeah,
see that
yeah,
how that's something when you're like, oh
yeah.
no, you're using that foot. Okay, just shut up, use the other foot. Just
Yeah, like I mean, I remember being on a lot of shoots where on Demon Souls, I was doing dance cards for it was like that was a year-long game, and I was doing dance cards for like 25 weapons, and the one of the gameplay director, the creative director, he was a professional gambler, and so he would watch my feet. He had like eagle eyes, and he could tell every time if I missed a spot. He's like, "Go back, do that one again." Like but like what happened is I trusted him, right? And I would just like go back and repeat that transition. And I kind of like developed my own, eagle eyes, I guess. And now, so anyway, these are the things that, a martial artist might think that they've been prepared for these things, but like in martial arts, you're usually not prepared with this stuff. They don't,
so you have the dice and some of the things are on there and it's like you hear it and it sounds like Chinese. So you like have, all right, hook, and then like you're gonna do this, and then there's something you don't know. So you said since somebody technically doesn't have be a martial artist, so people are honest, like, okay, can you show me what this is? You then show
sure.
it and
Oh
then
yeah.
just see if they can replicate.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
that's really good.
Yeah.
That,
You
I
just
think it
walk it
takes
really
some of the
slowly.
pressure off.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll show everything. No, I'm not trying to make them guess what I want, right?
It's the
That's like,
worst. That's why.
no, no, that's like not possible. And this is also the value of having like a movement coordinator, which is kind of what I call myself now, or a translator, where, an animator will say, um, we need a squash and stretch uppercut and like a sloppy squash and stretch uppercut, right? And in like sometimes a stunt performer is going to struggle to figure out like what they want, and sometimes the animator doesn't know what they want either. They
Mm-hmm,
just kind
mm-hmm.
of they just kind of know the mechanics of animation.
Yeah.
They don't really know what that does to the body. Sometimes the worst is like a jumping uppercut, right? Like we want you to do a jumping uppercut, and I'm like, well, it's gonna look terrible because it's not natural. And they go,
Yeah.
really? I animate it all the time. I'm like, I know.
How you can, you're just
Yeah, like no, like jump up in the air and then uppercut. I've been asked, and it's like, yeah, that's not really possible. It's really hard to do things like that.
do with a trampoline.
Maybe, but like it's not going to look the way that they want
Yeah.
it to, right? And so being able to translate for them into movement,
Yeah.
um, I
That
don't,
is an art that you're able to do that. I was
yeah,
telling my jujitsu coach here, I'm like rolling, and he's like, you got to use the right arm and the shoulder. And I was like, okay, in my mind, there's my one shoulder, my other shoulder. The one person also has two shoulders,
right,
which hand, and then like, now I have so many possibilities of things you could want me to do.
yeah,
But
I
I've
don't want
also
to be
taken
wrong.
a driving class where they were really good.
Yeah,
But a driving class where they were so good about it. Like you go in, you're doing a 90, and they're like, "What you do?" And they would like really tell you your hand wasn't like at this angle. So
that's
next
cool.
time they would ask, and I was like, "Oh, I was oversteering." I
That's
would never
cool.
know what oversteering is if they didn't drill into me where my
Yeah,
hand placement should be and where I had it.
yeah.
So that's when I learned that this technicality really helps me. I know the application of what I'm supposed to do, what's it supposed to look like, and then also kind of how to do it. So then also as you adjust, I'm like, okay, that helps versus like you said, there's like vague. So you seem if you're a translator and you're really good at it, plus that really is helpful to have somebody there to not have the performer have a question mark and then the animator and they're just
Oh, it's
like
the worst situation. Nothing gets done. It's the worst. Yeah, animator goes home not getting what they need. Some performer goes home thinking that their life is over.
so speaking of that, so you audition. So how does your casting process work? Something a studio comes in says, "All right, we want this." What is your process from the moment they say we need you to also get the talent? How does that
Well,
work?
depends, of course, on what they need. So sometimes they'll need a specialist. Uh, Worked on games where they need a contortionist. So we go to the Contortionists Incorporated in Las Vegas. There's 1,000 of them here, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the nice thing about living in Vegas is that their talent pool here is pretty good. If they need a juggler, we got lots of those. You need a stilt guy, I got lots of those. If you need a generalist, okay, now we got to talk because if you want someone who can do that kind of movement language and be able to modify movement, who's kind of a Swiss Army knife, It takes a long time to develop that skill, and we have a good roster. We have, Phil Kismartoni, Chris Cortez, Tekla Hutirova, Stevie Irwin, Alvin Singh. We had Dennis Rule. He passed in April, but he was one of those guys who, uh, man, he could do anything. So typically we hire Swiss Army knives.
So how
Uh,
does one prepare if they're like, all right, that's what I want to do, and how can I be the best Swiss Army knife if I don't have to be a martial artist and I don't have to be an expert? What is like the what are the one or two things that you advise for somebody to daily or generally do to become a Swiss Army knife that's hireable?
I think that kind of having that theatrical ability to put character into movement, that's one. And the other is just pure physicality. You got to be able to go 8 hours. You got to be able to be powerful. Uh, you have to, you, you know, because it's this weird merge of like clown and football. Right? It's like a really weird
It
intersection.
makes sense. It makes
You know
sense.
what I mean? So for me, the most important thing is, my mocap class, I don't really have a class. I teach for free.
I was just gonna ask you, like, if somebody wanted to know like your style too, like, do you usually offer just
Yeah,
a
well, I have tutorials online. Like I put a tutorial online called the 5 stages of movement. So that's like instrumental to
check it
everything
out?
we do. So 5 stages of movement, that's super important. You got to learn how to do dance cards, even though those are like less common now, but they're common
Oh,
enough to be able to know how to run a dance card. Um, and then your basics. So like your basic punches, kicks, falls, reactions, and throws and rolls. Those are extremely important. And you don't need to be a boxer. Like you need to have physicality. The ability to just like manipulate your body into like various attacks, like if your idea of a punch is kind of set by your martial art coach and you're afraid of him hitting you for doing it wrong, then this might not be the right job for you, right? If the
yeah.
ability to kind of break that mold and think more about the character of movement, well, if you can do that with martial art basics, then you're in good shape. We tend not to do much martial arts in mocap. It's like you really only do like 8 moves.
That's
It's the
actually
four the
so
four
good to
punches.
know.
It really is like it's really 4 punches. Front kick, roundhouse kick, side kick, sometimes a spin kick, very rarely. The ability to spin is really important. So like 360 one way, 360 the other way, stay on a line
Mhm.
without going off the line. They're really sensitive to that.
How about gymnastics and like a thing abilities?
Gymnastics really helps. I mean, if you can do trampoline, if you can
Mhm.
do trampoline flips, and land out of flips on, an 8-inch mat, um, there's a lot of things where, we'll have an acrobatic move that I mean, I can't do a front 1.5. I just can't do it. I can do a front tuck, but like it's a handful of mocap shoots will come up where, um, acrobatic talent really helps. But there aren't many acrobatic games,
Yeah,
right?
totally makes
That's
sense.
that's
Yeah.
not the bulk of the games. There's Spider-Man, obviously. Maybe some other Marvel characters will have flip-like movements, but I find that, the ability to ride a wire is maybe even more helpful.
That would have been my next question because I did
Yeah.
see some of it that there was wire.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do wires. We do wires at our studio, and being able to manipulate yourself on a wire is really, I find that's probably more beneficial than acrobatics. But having basic gymnastics really does help.
That's actually very motivating to know if you know it's your dream to go into it and you're like, man, I'm not an expert. It seems like everybody has to like be a tricker or has to be a martial artist or dancer in order to get into it. And you're saying, no, if you can like take direction and you have the stamina to do 8 hours, don't complain, listen, and do the hard work. That's really helpful. So we're all on the same page, though, that you might have all that and still not get work because you just don't know where to get the work, and you're in the
Yeah.
same boat, even though you have a studio, so now you're creating a lot of it, again, building your own door for it. So I think that's really interesting, because I just talked to one of my voiceover coaches. I had a business session, and I was like, man, I really like video games. Is it? He's like, man, we get like a tiny fraction of those on our ends too. He's like, when one of the big agencies, he's like, he got really lucky on one, ended up doing, he's hell diver. So he was that guy. And I was like, man, he's like, yeah, that was like one job of my entire career. But he's like, you probably have a better chance to do it in stunts than we do on our ends to do it.
Mm.
So it's really interesting to hear that it still is tough, and it's one of those right time, right moment, right
Yeah.
person kind of things. So to kind of close that out, I do have a listener question, actually. So somebody was like, I can't believe it. I've actually followed Eric's story like along. He's like a regular dude, and then went in and did all this stuff. And I was like, well, would you like to ask something? It's like, no, I got to think. So the question was, if you had to start stunts all over again in today's day and age, what would you do to establish yourself and grow to that same heights you've achieved right now or greater?
Um, Starting now.
Yeah,
My
in the
gosh, like I
70s.
just I just think it would be so much easier now.
You don't think it would be
Because
oversaturated? Like if you went the same
it
trajectory
doesn't
that you did?
matter. It doesn't matter. No, the oversaturation thing is a myth. I don't believe that. And here's why. Everybody has their own story to tell. It's always been that way. I have felt like it was oversaturated when I was a kid, when I was starting. And look, when you look at the current state of tricking martial arts, whatever, right? There are these trends going on that like people think that they have to hit this trend. Like everybody's got to do the tactical. Everybody's got to do this like very specific kind of like punch style. Everybody's got
Yeah.
to do this thing. So like in a sense, yeah, it's there's a million people out there doing the exact same thing right now. So all you got to do is kind of like think outside the box a little bit because that was happening when I was doing this too. So no, I don't think it's oversaturated. I think that if you are true to your art and you are, if you have if you have a story to tell, then tell it your way. Don't do it for a coordinator. Please, please, I'm begging people to stop making short films for coordinators. Don't do it.
Hmm. That makes sense.
They don't want it. They don't want you to regurgitate the stuff they've done. They don't want that. They want to see something new. And if all you're doing is regurgitating the same thing they've done for 4 movies, they don't want it. They're looking for a new thing. They're sick of it.
I feel the same in acting now that you say that, because you're trying to capture like a style, things that, like you said, that are in, and then you want to make sure you're that, but now you're like one of a million that does the exact same thing. My heart kind of just lights up in that, because I've always just been me, and I was like, I can just only be me in that sense. And yeah, like you said, you were molded for the Kratos in a certain way, and you loved that. There was some direction that you were going in, and it was something very specific, but you just stay true to you. So if you were to do it again, you would just use whatever is out there now, but just keep doing your passion, your research, and just following the dreams. And it seems like finding the right people always comes up to being the thing, the people around you that you kind of brought each other up
That
to.
that's extremely important. And I think that maybe, the new generation, they might think that that's difficult right now. I'm not sure that's true. Um, I think that whenever you need to build a core. I'm writing a book right now called um, Badass on a Budget. And
Ooh.
I talk about this stuff like zero budget action filmmaking, how you do it. And one of the things is you got to have a core. And your core might be just like one person. Like the two of you might be all you need. Maybe you got a sibling, then you're off to a great start. Like siblings always kill it. They're the ones that always kill it at the beginning. Um, like the Lee brothers, right? It's like, boom, you've already got that taken care of. You got the relationship part down. If you're a single child like me, you got to like get to know people, which sucks. But like once you have that, once you have your core, and you got to find some kind of like our Bible was Hong Kong cinema. It's very simple. Like here's how we do things. That was wrong because Hong Kong cinema says this. We're very very fundamentalist. It's Hong Kong cinema nuts, right? But that was our core, and
Yeah.
that kind of that started bringing people in because it wasn't about me. it was about this shared vision. And I hate to break it to people, but if like you're trying to break in as a movie star and you want to make it about you, well, you're not going to have much of a core.
Yeah,
Sorry. Like maybe you've got a rich uncle, right? Like maybe
that
that's
would
your
be
core.
nice.
Cool, great, good job. But like most of us don't have that. And like it's going to have to not be about you. It's
Yeah,
going to have to be about, you know, the vision, the art, and that's what brings people in. That's what's gonna really bring people in. Give them ownership over it. They're gonna love that. And these are just like this is Sun Tzu's Art of War, man. It's the same stuff that's been happening for 2,500 years. Nothing's changed.
yeah. So, final question of the night. What's in your stunt bag? What does a mocap stunt performer have in their stunt
Ah,
bag?
good question. Depends on if I'm doing optical or extends mocap, because an optical mocap, you can't really wear pads. So there's nothing in my stunt pad for when I do optical except shoes. But for extends mocap, we can put the pads on the outside. So my stunt bag has we've got the gator back. I've got a wire rigging vest. I've also got a weight vest that allows me to grab and grapple with people, and it's kind of tight.
Ooh.
I've got a, sparring helmet so I can grab people's heads. We have what else do I have in there? I feel like I've got some weird stuff in there,
I'm sure of all
like
the
one.
years you
Like
do.
I've got this big old tiger claw kicking peg where I just ram it into the performer if we need to do an explosion or something. That always looks good. So my stunt bag is huge. It's in my studio. My studio is my stunt bag now.
Oh man, I can see that. Well, that's super amazing. It seems like, I mean, obviously pads are important to everybody, always has pads, but it's really interesting to hear all of the other things you have in addition, like the sparring helmet and all of those things. And then
Yeah.
sometimes that you don't need anything at all because you can't wear anything. So, wow, what an insight into the long journey you've had getting to AR and the way the little detours went along the way. So I guess with that the way that question went, would you change anything?
No, no
Good
way.
answer. Good answer.
No way. I
Good answer.
did, I feel like, I had Dennis was kind of the angel on my shoulder the whole time.
You
Dennis
need
ruled.
that. You need
Needed
that.
him because he was the one who was always like they're trying to make you dilute the action. They're trying to make you go away from your principles. They're not letting you be who you need to be. He was that guy. He was always speaking into my ear. And I'm so fortunate I had someone like him through this whole journey. Otherwise, yeah, I might have sold my soul. And fortunately, I never had to.
So have a good friend on your side. That is a good ending. Somebody who grounds you, keeps you where you are, also makes you remember who you are and staying with it. Well, thank you so much for your time and all of the wisdom and the insights and getting to know you a little bit better because there's, like I said, so much information out there for you. So to just kind of get you in this little intimate moment was very, very nice. Thank you for
Cool.
taking the time to be
Thanks for
here.
having me.
Bye.